$1 million per Bitcoin. Will it ever happen? Will it happen next year? When will it happen? There's very different opinions around this topic. And I want to share my opinion around this as well. I want to share my calculations around this. And the assumptions that we take are simply based on the data that we so far observe in macroeconomics, but also within Bitcoin, within the blockchain ecospace as well. Now, the first important thing to know is that the monetary base is expanding over time, right? The US and any other country is printing fiat every year. And on average, year over year, US M2, so the US money supply, expands by roughly 7%. Okay, so the geometric average over several decades is 7% per annum in monetary expansion growth. Now that means we have to put this into relationship to other returns, right? When we have something that doesn't lose any monetary value, it should go up in US dollar denomination by at least 7% per annum. If we look at the S&P 500, right? We look at the long-term S&P 500 chart and we divide this by the US money supply. What we notice is we get a pretty flat line. In other words, the price of US stocks pretty much grows in line with US money supply. You make money in stocks simply because the fiat currencies get diluted over time. On top of the S&P 500, of course, you also get dividends, but you also get costs, you also get taxes. So if you cancel out the dividends with the costs and the tax, etc., then probably you're simply just keeping your purchasing power over the decades investing into stocks, right? So that's the first takeaway. If you just invest in the S&P 500, if you don't get any more risk on, like investing in tech stocks like the Nasdaq, etc. So if you believe that things simply continue the way they currently are, and we believe that the monetary expansion will stay at the current rate, then we should at least expect Bitcoin to go up by 7% per annum. Now that's not the only effect here, right? The second effect we have with Bitcoin is that Bitcoin gets lost. So some Bitcoin is never recoverable again, right? People store this on their hardware wallet and maybe forget about it. Then other Bitcoin gets stolen and then gets lost or confiscated. There's Bitcoin that's never going to get recovered, that never enters circulation again. And when we look at the on-chain metrics, we can say that roughly 2% every year of all of the Bitcoin gets lost. So if you don't lose your Bitcoin, then you should expect at least an additional 2% per annum return from this, right? So we've got 7% due to monetary expansion. We've got another 2 percentage points due to Bitcoin that gets lost. So this gives us already 9% per annum. This could be an expectation. We could simply just look at the current price and then compound this by 9% per annum and see at what point in time will we hit the million. I think we can refine this a bit further. For example, we also have the continued adoption by traditional finance. Now this number is a little bit wacky because this does fluctuate quite a bit. Currently, if we look at the last 2 weeks at the Bitcoin adoption, at the Bitcoin ETF that scooped up spot Bitcoin, that was roughly at a rate of 3 percentage points per annum. Okay, so 3% of all of Bitcoin's supply gets bought every year by the Bitcoin ETF if you just look at the last 2 weeks. Now this number fluctuates. Some people say this might go down. Others say this might go up as there's more institutions that might be allocating to the Bitcoin ETF. Some people say that maybe more pension funds will allocate towards Bitcoin. It's very hard to say where this number is going. Let's simply just take the conservative approach that takes the current number and let's not assume that the Bitcoin ETF demand will grow over time. So what do we then have? We've got 7%, we've got 2%, we've got 3%, we've got 12% return per annum. Now on top of that, we've also got the Bitcoin mining, and this is actually a negative effect. Currently 0.8% per annum gets mined through the Bitcoin miners. But if we are now looking at a multi-decade potential return, right? We look at a compound return on Bitcoin. We try to find out when will it hit the 1 million. Then over the next halvings, right? Every 4 years it gets cut in half. We can probably almost ignore this effect, right? We've got the 0.8 percentage points now. This will become 0.4. This will become 0.2. So if you look at the next 20 years, 30 years, this probably doesn't matter too much. So let's keep this number. Let's keep the compound number. Let's work with 12% per annum. Now we could simply just take the current price, right? And then compound this with 12% per annum and see at what point in time will we hit the million. But I think if we look at these very long-term charts, we can't actually take the current price. I think a better approximation for the long-term price development is the realized price, as in where is Bitcoin's average cost basis. So if you've been following this channel for a while, you know what the realized price is. It's basically a measure of looking at what price did Bitcoin move the last time. And usually the Bitcoin price tends to hover around the realized price. The realized price doesn't really drop much. It usually goes up, and the current price hovers around the realized price. So sometimes people in aggregate are in losses. That's when people don't tend to sell that much. And sometimes they are in profit. That's when sometimes profit taking happens, right? Currently, we are pretty heavily in profit. The realized price is at only 30,000. So if we assume that Bitcoin continues to hover around the realized price, and if we continue to assume that Bitcoin will grow with 12% per annum, so we take the 30% as the fair price, and we assume a compounding of 12% per annum, the 1 million mark, when will it be hit? The answer is in 31 years. So basically with the next generation. If you buy a Bitcoin today and you give it to your newborn at the age of 31, then they will have probably somewhere around $1 million in their account if they were to sell the Bitcoin. So this is my best guesstimate. 31 years is a very conservative guesstimate though. It's my absolute minimum expectation. What's very important to note also, since we are looking at that long of a time frame, is that since there is monetary expansion, that 1 million won't feel as that much money. Because money expands over time at 7% per annum, that million will feel in today's dollars like $131,000. So in real purchasing power, I believe the minimum appreciation of Bitcoin will be a 2x in 31 years. That's the absolute minimum that I expect. So if you use Bitcoin just as a savings vehicle, this is, I think, the absolute lowest floor. If we assume, of course, that Bitcoin will not suddenly get hacked and go to zero, and if you assume that the monetary expansion will stay the way it is, which I also expect to be the case. It has been like this for many years. I believe the numbers I have are for 60 or 70 years. So it is somewhat reasonable to assume that this will continue for the next 30 years. So the minimum expectation is a 2x in 31 years in real purchasing power, or $1 million Bitcoin in 31 years. But I think the realistic expectation is actually quite a lot higher. And that has to do with liquidity, because not all of the Bitcoin that's being traded is liquid, right? There's a lot of Bitcoin that just gets stashed away. Thus, when there is a demand overhang of 12% per annum, we should not just expect a price appreciation of 12% per annum. Roughly half of Bitcoin haven't moved for the last 5 years. If we continue to assume that this proportion will increase, which I think is very likely, then at least the impact of those 12% demand overhang will increase the price by 24% per annum. So half of the Bitcoin is illiquid. 12% supply overhang means an annual return of 24% in fiat terms. Now this makes things way more interesting, right? If you've got 24% annualized growth in the Bitcoin price, and we still take the 30K as the fair price, when are we going to hit the 1 million? The answer is in 17 years. How much purchasing power will we have at the time? Roughly 430K worth in today's money. So you'll hit $1 million nominal in Bitcoin in 17 years. That's my realistic expectation, and it will feel in today's purchasing power. If you buy any other asset, right? If you buy, say, a house, or if you buy stocks, it will feel like $430,000. And so if you want to feel like a millionaire in 17 years, right? If you want to have the purchasing power equal to 1 million today in 17 years, you need roughly 2.3 Bitcoin. If you hold 2.3 Bitcoin today and you want to feel like having the purchasing power of a millionaire in 17 years, you are set up relatively well. You will be a nominal Bitcoin millionaire, so you will have $1 million if you sell your Bitcoin in 17 years. If you just buy 1 Bitcoin today.
This needs to go to 1 million, or March buyers now will make millions. This is how you get the clicks on YouTube, but this is not how you beat the market. To beat the market in crypto, you need to be better informed than the rest. You need to be better skilled than the rest. You need to do better blockchain analytics. You need to track other people's wallets and know what is the smart money doing. It's the boring educational content that forms skill that doesn't perform so well on YouTube though. That's why I created the premium membership. Feel free to check it out. We are tracking influencer wallets to find out what they are buying before promoting this on YouTube. We've got a lot of tutorials to help with on-chain analytics, to help with wallet discovery. And of course, there are also plenty of chats where we help each other and also one-on-one conversations with me. So I'm messaging every premium member one-on-one directly. Once you're joining, you will get a message from me and you have the opportunity to directly pick my brain. Feel free to check it out. thebitcointrader.com, link is down below.
So this is my expectation. This is how I set myself up. If we get positively surprised, that's great. We might hit the million also a bit earlier because, again, the current price fluctuates around the realized price. Currently, we are more than 2x above the realized price. So we might hit this a few years earlier. But this is my expectation. This is, I think, how we can set ourselves up. Now, to some, this might sound somewhat depressing, right? You might think, I don't have 2.3 Bitcoin right now, and I also don't have 17 years to wait, and I still want to become a millionaire as quickly as possible. What potential avenues are there to get there quicker, right? We all want to be there as quickly as possible. The first, most obvious approach is to simply trade more risk on assets, right? To start actively trading meme coins, for example. But for that, you've got a real player versus player game. So this is not anymore just investing. This is not anymore just capital allocation. This is active income because you have to be on top of your game. You have to be in the top 5% of traders. You have to be able to pick the bottoms and the tops better than the average. And most people aren't able to do this. Most people don't have adequate time to invest or adequate capital to invest. If you're interested in that though, feel free to check out the premium membership, right? We do active meme coin trading. We track other professional traders. We track other influencers. We buy with the influencer and then sell when the influencer promotes. So feel free to check it out. It's thebitcointrader.com. It's only relevant for the people that have at least 5,000 US dollars in crypto. It's better to have a bit more than that. But there's other approaches as well, right? If you don't want to go the active trading route. If you don't yet have the 2.3 Bitcoin to invest in order to be the purchasing power millionaire in 17 years. And that's the main constraint. You can simply just work more, right? Think about this. If you don't have a lot of money now and you work more, maybe the additional hours you now put in by having a side hustle or by maybe skilling up your skills, right? By having a job that pays more. The additional ROI that you get on whatever money you now have by just working more, by selling more hours with a side hustle, the ROI you get per month or per year might be super, super high compared to if you just were to invest this, right? If you now just have, say, 3 months saved up and you suddenly work an extra side hustle and you make with this extra side hustle 50% of your regular income and you save all of that 50%, after 6 months, you will have doubled your capital, right? How likely is it that you will double your capital every 6 months if you were to start out with meme coin trading? It's not that high, right? If you're super successful and you've done this for several years, then maybe. But doubling your money consistently every 6 months is super, super hard. And just taking on a side hustle and saving all of that money is way, way easier. It's a way more direct approach. So if you don't yet have a lot of money, selling time is not an issue. If you've already saved up 2 or 3 years, and that's your capital you speculate with, then of course just selling more time will not cut it. But if you're just starting out, just sell more time and use that money to invest in Bitcoin potentially, right? Until you reach the 2.3 Bitcoin. Now, all of those options don't sound super sexy, but they are realistic, right? It is realistic to work more and save that. It is realistic to learn a ton regarding blockchain analytics and beat the meme coin trading game. Those are all realistic, but you have to put in the effort to learn how to trade properly. You have to become the top 5%. You have to put in the effort to work more and sell that time. There's a third way. It's also realistic, but it is very stressful as well. And that is taking smart leverage. So you don't want to leverage your altcoin trading bets, but you can leverage the very long term in Bitcoin. What you can do is you can wait for the Bitcoin price to fall below the realized price. That's now 30K. So you wait until we are below 30K. Once we hit a price below the realized price, we tend to turn around within the next 6 to 12 months, right? There is way less selling pressure on Bitcoin when everybody is currently in the negatives. So when we are completely depressed, you have to get super aggressive risk on. So what you can do is you can go to the bank and you can take on a personal loan. Usually, a personal loan is only given up to 12 months. At least that's how it's in Asia, that's how it's in Hong Kong. It's up to 12 months. What you can then do is, in order to still stay somewhat safe, right, because taking on a loan in order to buy crypto is pretty much unheard of. A lot of people take on a loan, right? They take on a mortgage to buy a house. So buying a super depressed Bitcoin is probably not the worst thing in the world. And buying this for 1 year worth of income is probably also not the worst in the world because, people buy houses worth several years of income. So actually, financially, you're not really doing that risky of a move. Getting a mortgage is way riskier of a move, in my opinion, just financially. So what you can do is you can wait then until the price is below those 30K. You take out the personal loan, so this 1 year worth of income personal loan, and you pay this off over the next 6 years. So that's normally the maximum that the banks are able to give you, right? So you can get 6 years of payoff for a 1 year of income, and that equates to roughly 10% of your income. So if you can stash away 10% of your income consistently over the next 6 years, this is a pretty safe bet where you will not have to declare bankruptcy. People are super scared of that, but if you do it very smartly, you don't have to be. If you don't overlever yourself, and if you have a 6-year payoff period, and if you can pay 10% additionally every year, then that's fine, right? If you can stash away 10%. You can get the 10% simply just by changing jobs, right? Change your job today, get a 15, 20% rise, and then take all of that additional payment that you get and put this into that loan. But again, right now, I wouldn't do that loan because the current price is way above the realized price. But when we are depressed that massively and the price goes below the realized price, this does make a lot of sense. And I personally actually did that. I did exactly that bet, not with 6 years, but with 3 years of a duration for an entire year worth of income. I did this when we were at around 20K in Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin moved all the way to 72K, and then that's when I sold quite a bit. So I made almost 3 years of income in the span of a year by pulling that move. It is stressful, right? Because you can easily, when we are below the realized price, drop again by another 10, 20, 30%. This is in the realm of possibility, and you're now highly levered. You suddenly lost 4 months of value in a very short period of time. This is stressful, and you have to keep holding your Bitcoin, and you can't sell the Bitcoin and take the losses. You are then locked in for that bet, and this can give sleepless nights if you don't have other assets as well. But it is a potential way to accumulate wealth relatively quickly. Not necessarily to millionaire status very fast, but yeah, 3 years of additional income in the span of a year, if you time this well, is potentially possible. Is this a controversial approach? Yes, of course it is. It's way less controversial to buy a house, but you can't just do the regular thing that everybody else is doing if you want to get outcomes that are above the regular outcomes. People will declare you insane if you do this, especially when we are in a bear market where nobody wants to have Bitcoin, and you suddenly take out this huge personal loan and you buy Bitcoin with it. People will declare you as a crazy person. You don't have to listen to those people. You don't even have to tell anybody about this. I personally didn't tell many people about what I did at the time. So 2 of those 3 approaches are simply just related with stashing away more cash or generating more cash, right? Having the side hustle can also help. With the personal loan approach, you can do both. I also did both. I also did the meme coin trading, so I did all 3 of those approaches. You don't need all 3 of them. It all depends on how serious you are with all of this. Make sure when you take on risk that you actually do this in a smart manner, right? Make sure when you take this additional side job that you don't spew all the money away and that you suddenly increase your lifestyle already, right? You are still in the investment phase and you first want to reach at least 2-3 years of income saved up. At that point in time, life does get a bit less stressful. So that's my prediction, $1 million per Bitcoin, at least in 31 years, potentially already in 17 years. That's my realistic expectation. Of course, we could hit it much more early, But that would be simply just a positive outcome, right? A positive surprise. We shouldn't necessarily bet the farm on this, but we can bet the farm on the price of Bitcoin being higher in 6 years when the current price is below the realized price, which is currently is not, right? We have to wait for another crash. Feel free to give this a like in case you got a new thought out of this. Feel free to also subscribe in case it's your first time here. Feel free to also join our Telegram group. There is a link down below to join our Telegram. Looking very much forward to chatting with you. If you're interested in meme coin trading, in blockchain analytics, in tracking other influencer wallets, feel free to also check out Premium. Link is as well down below. See you over there as well. Cheers.